You've probably met someone like this before. A man who smiles at everyone, never says no, always puts others first. He's the one who stays late to help colleagues, who gives his time freely, who bends over backward to make everyone comfortable. People call him nice, reliable, a good guy. But here's what they don't say to his face. They don't respect him. They take his kindness for granted, walk over his boundaries, and promote someone else while he's still waiting for his turn to be noticed. Here's the uncomfortable truth Machiavelli understood 500 years ago. Kindness without power is weakness in disguise, and the world doesn't reward weakness. It exploits it. You've been taught that being good will eventually pay off, that karma will reward your generosity, that people will recognize your heart and treat you fairly in return. But in reality, the world doesn't operate on fairness. It operates on power dynamics. And when you lead with kindness alone, you signal that you can be controlled. If you found value in this perspective, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We dive deep into the uncomfortable truths about power, influence, and human nature that most people refuse to discuss. Hit that subscribe button and let's continue exploring what it really takes to succeed in this world. That's why Machiavelli wrote that it's better to be feared than loved. Not because fear is inherently good, but because fear commands respect, while love without boundaries commands nothing. The prince who rules through kindness alone will find his throne empty and his kingdom conquered by someone who understands that power requires both the capacity for gentleness and the willingness to be ruthless when necessary. This might sound harsh, and in a way it is, but harshness applied strategically prevents greater cruelty later. When you're too kind to set boundaries, people push further. When you're too generous with your time, people waste it. When you're too quick to forgive, people repeat their offenses. Your kindness becomes their invitation to take advantage, and soon you find yourself exhausted, resentful, and wondering why good people finish last. Because in the theater of power, those who refuse to play the game seriously are given minor roles, no matter how good their intentions are. You might think the world rewards virtue. It doesn't. It rewards strategic virtue, the leader who can be kind when it serves his purpose and ruthless when kindness would be suicide. The man who understands that sometimes being cruel in the moment prevents greater suffering later. Kindness is not a strategy, it's a tool. And like any tool, it's only useful when applied at the right time, in the right measure, for the right purpose. When you make kindness your default setting, you give up your power to choose. You become predictable, and predictable people are easily manipulated by those who understand the game better. Think of the times your kindness was repaid with betrayal. Think of the moments you sacrificed your own interests to help someone who never returned the favor. Think of the occasions when you were passed over for promotion because you were too nice to demand what you deserved, while someone less qualified but more assertive claimed the position you should have had. This world doesn't hand out rewards for having a good heart. It hands out power to those who understand that kindness must be balanced with strength, that generosity must be paired with boundaries, that love must be backed by the capacity for force when necessary. That's why some of the most successful leaders aren't the kindest people. They're the most strategic. They know when to be warm and when to be cold. They understand that respect comes not from being liked, but from being unpredictable enough that people think twice before crossing them. They move like kindness is a choice they make, not a weakness others can exploit. It's not cruelty, it's calculation. It's the discipline of showing up as whatever the situation requires, not whatever makes you feel like a good person. You might say, "But I don't want to become cruel." That's fine. You don't need to be. You just need to be capable of it. Not to harm innocent people, but to protect yourself from those who would harm you. You're not abandoning your values. You're upgrading your strategy. You're learning that true kindness sometimes looks like firmness. That real love sometimes requires saying no. That genuine care for others sometimes means refusing to enable their bad behavior by always saying yes to their demands. Every interaction matters. How you respond to unreasonable requests, how you handle people who test your boundaries, how you react when someone tries to guilt you into giving more than you should. It's all part of the signal you send. And that signal either says, I can be controlled, or I choose my own terms. People don't dig deep to understand your motivations. They respond to what they see on the surface, not because they're evil, but because that's how power dynamics work. We test each other constantly. We push to see where the boundaries are. We take what we can get until someone stops us. This is not about becoming heartless. It's about becoming strategic. If you're kind because you choose to be, from a position of strength, that kindness has power. But if you're kind because you're afraid to be anything else, that kindness becomes a liability. People sense the difference instantly. You are not just living in relationships, you are negotiating them. And every negotiation has someone who leads and someone who follows. If you always defer, always accommodate, always put others first without considering your own needs, you're teaching people that your needs don't matter. So learn to be selectively kind, not to manipulate others, but to maintain your power to choose. And understand what Machiavelli knew, but modern society forgot. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's bad behavior. Sometimes the most loving response is a firm no. Have you ever wondered why some people, even when they're not particularly nice, still get all the respect? They walk into a room, make demands, set their terms, and somehow everyone complies. Meanwhile, someone else, perhaps you, bends over backward to please everyone, sacrifices personal time, goes above and beyond, and still your efforts go unnoticed and unappreciated. It's not your heart that's the problem. It's not your intentions. It's the signal you send when you lead with kindness without backing it up with boundaries. The world doesn't follow niceness, it follows strength, and strength is not the absence of kindness. It's kindness with conditions. People crave structure. They want to know where the lines are. And when you're kind to everyone all the time, you erase those lines. You become a pushover, not because you want to, but because you've removed all the consequences for people who take advantage of your goodness. Power is not a reward for being liked. It's a requirement for being effective. If you want to lead, to influence, to make a real difference, you cannot afford to be nice at your own expense. You will exhaust yourself trying to please everyone and end up helping no one effectively. The difference is, those who understand Machiavelli's lesson choose their battles. They are warm with allies and cold with enemies. They reward loyalty and punish betrayal. They understand that being consistently kind to people who consistently disrespect them is not virtue. It's enabling dysfunction. This is why you've seen average people with strong boundaries achieve more than exceptional people with weak ones. Why someone who says no confidently gets more respect than someone who always says yes. Because the world reflects what you project. And if you project that you're willing to sacrifice yourself for others' comfort, people will let you. You can be generous, compassionate, and caring. But if your behavior signals that you have no limits, people won't appreciate your generosity. They'll assume it's unlimited and take accordingly. They'll push your boundaries because you've taught them there are no consequences for crossing them. That's why you must learn to be kind strategically. Walk into relationships with clear terms. Be generous with people who respect your boundaries and firm with those who don't. Carry yourself like someone who chooses to be good, not someone who has to be good because he's afraid of conflict. Even your generosity should have intention behind it. A thoughtful no is more powerful than an automatic yes. A boundary defended is more valuable than a boundary that doesn't exist. These are not signs of selfishness. They're signs of self-respect. When you operate from this place, when your kindness comes with conditions and your generosity has limits, something interesting happens. People start treating your time as valuable. They think twice before making unreasonable requests. They appreciate your help more because they know you could say no. This isn't about being mean, it's about being selective. Even your silence can command respect if you use it strategically. When someone makes an unreasonable demand and you simply look at them calmly, hold eye contact and wait. They often realize their mistake without you having to explain why they're wrong. But silence without boundaries, that's just avoidance. You must learn the difference. When you set a limit and hold it firmly but kindly, your presence has started teaching before your words have even begun. And when you finally speak, let your voice carry the weight of your self-respect. Not just respect for others, but respect for yourself. Speak like your time matters, like your energy has value, like people would be foolish to waste either one. Because if you don't value your own resources, no one else will either. People want to follow someone who has clear standards. They want to trust someone who won't sacrifice their principles for approval. They want to respect someone who is kind by choice, not by compulsion. So choose. Not because you want to hurt anyone, not because you're becoming selfish, but because you understand that sustainable kindness requires sustainable boundaries. And if you don't protect your capacity to be good, you'll burn out trying to be good to everyone and end up good to no one. You might still wonder, what if people don't like me when I start setting boundaries? But here's the real question. Do you want to be liked for who you pretend to be, or respected for who you actually are? Because people who only appreciate you when you're sacrificing yourself don't actually appreciate you. They appreciate what you do for them. Everyone tests boundaries. Even the most respectful people will occasionally push to see what they can get away with. The difference is how you respond. You can either teach them that your limits mean something, or you can teach them that your limits are suggestions they can ignore. Think of boundaries as a kind of respect education. At first, it feels uncomfortable. You say no when you used to say yes. You hold firm when you used to bend. You disappoint people who got used to your unlimited availability. But the more you practice it, the more people learn to respect your time, your energy, your choices. You are not being cruel to the world. You're teaching it how to treat you well. And you're teaching yourself that your needs matter too. Because every time you honor your own boundaries, you build self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of all other respect. This is how healthy relationships are built, not on unlimited giving, but on mutual respect. The world doesn't reward the person who gives the most. It rewards the person who gives strategically, who maintains their own strength so they can continue giving from a place of choice rather than obligation. You've seen this in action. A person who is kind but firm gets more respect than someone who is kind but weak. People make way for boundaries. They defer to strength. Why? Because strength, even gentle strength, commands attention. It says, this person values themselves, so they're probably worth valuing. On the other hand, think about the person who gives endlessly without limits. People don't treasure unlimited resources. They waste them. They assume there's always more coming. They take without gratitude because abundance without boundaries feels like entitlement. This is the cruel irony of unconditional kindness. And it is a choice. You can choose to be kind without conditions and watch people waste your goodness. Or you can choose to be kind with wisdom, generous with intention, and good with limits. You don't need permission to start valuing yourself. You value yourself, and the permission follows. The world will treat you exactly the way you teach it to treat you. So when you enter relationships, stop giving everything away immediately. Don't rush to prove how good you are by sacrificing what you need. Move like your kindness is valuable, your time is precious, your energy is limited. Not because you want to withhold good from the world, but because you finally understand that sustainable goodness requires sustainable boundaries. People respect what costs them something, not what comes for free, not unlimited availability, not endless accommodation, but thoughtful generosity. You can be wrong and still maintain boundaries. You can lack experience and still command respect. As long as you carry yourself like someone who believes their own needs matter too. That's why strategic kindness is not volume. It's not giving everything to everyone. It's presence. It's the quiet strength in your decisions, the calm in your no's, the firmness in your limits. It's moving deliberately because you don't need to sacrifice yourself for approval. It's holding your ground like solid earth. It's not needing to prove your goodness because you've already decided you're worth protecting. People want someone to respect, someone to trust, someone who maintains their strength while caring for others. And when they sense that balance in you, they start to value your attention more. Not because you force them to, but because they finally understand that your kindness is a gift, not a given. So don't give your goodness away carelessly. Don't keep sacrificing yourself thinking it proves your worth. Your worth doesn't need proving, it needs protecting. Goodness is a resource. Use it wisely. No one feels obligated to treasure what they never had to earn. The strongest people you know were bold enough to be kind, selectively. They loved strategically and learned to say no gracefully. They jumped into relationships with boundaries and learned to maintain them under pressure. That's your job now, not to perfect your selflessness, but to balance it with self-respect. Not to give unlimited access, but to make your kindness valuable by making it conditional. Not to apologize for having needs, but to honor them with quiet strength. You've probably heard people say, kill them with kindness. But that's not quite right. You're not killing anything. You're building something. You're practicing sustainable goodness, the way a wise person manages their resources. Not hoarding them, but not wasting them either. Investing them where they'll grow and withdrawing them where they're being squandered. And when you get to that point, when you've worn kindness like a choice for so long, it becomes natural. People stop testing. They stop taking advantage. They start assuming what you've taught them to assume. Your goodness has value. Your time has worth. Your boundaries have meaning. The irony is profound but true. Power doesn't go to the kindest person. It goes to the person who is kind strategically, the person who can be generous without being weak, the person who radiates goodness while maintaining strength, not because he hates others, but because he finally learned to value himself. You are not in a contest for who can sacrifice the most, or give the most, or please the most people. You're in a dance of mutual respect, and respect flows both ways. If you carry yourself as endlessly available, you will be taken for granted. If you give without limits, your generosity will be wasted. But if you love with boundaries, give with intention, and care with conditions, people will treasure what you offer. You don't need to become cruel to be powerful. You don't need to stop caring to command respect. You don't even need to explain your boundaries to maintain them. What you do need is to drop the habit of proving your worth through endless giving. Stop hoping that sacrifice will earn you love. Stop believing that saying yes to everything makes you a good person. Power in relationships is not about domination, it's about balance. It reflects whatever you establish. If you establish that you have no limits, people will assume you have no value. If you establish that your kindness comes with respect for your own needs, people will adjust their expectations accordingly. You are not just moving through relationships, you are establishing the terms with every interaction. And every time you honor a boundary, every time you say no when you need to, every time you choose strategic kindness over automatic compliance, you're sending a message. This is who I am. This is how I expect to be treated. So let me ask you, what have you been teaching people? Have you been showing them that you're someone who gives without limits, or someone who gives with wisdom? Have you been acting like your needs don't matter, or like they matter as much as everyone else's? Because that pattern, more than your intentions, your sacrifices, or your good heart, determines how people will treat your kindness. If you assume your needs don't matter, the world will treat them as optional. If you act like your time is unlimited, people will waste it freely. But if you assume your kindness is valuable, if you move like your generosity is a gift to be appreciated, then others will learn to treasure what you offer. You may not control every relationship. You may not always get the gratitude you deserve, but you do control how you show up. And when you show up with strategic kindness, people feel the difference. When you enter relationships with clear boundaries and your goodness speaks for itself but doesn't sacrifice itself, something shifts. That shift is what separates the used from the valued, the depleted from the sustainable, the doormat from the person who chooses to be good. So here is the truth that changes everything. You do not become respected by accident. You become respected by being kind strategically, by giving thoughtfully, by maintaining boundaries consistently until it becomes impossible to see you as someone who can be taken advantage of. The person who loves with limits isn't withholding goodness. He isn't being cruel or selfish. He isn't waiting for the right person to deserve his kindness. He moves as if his own needs matter too. And the world learns, not because he demanded it to, but because he taught it to. So now, it's your turn. No more endless giving, no more automatic yeses, no more sacrificing yourself to prove your worth. From this moment forward, be kind strategically. Not because you have something to prove, but because you finally understand that sustainable goodness requires sustainable boundaries. Respect is not earned through sacrifice, it is established through balance, and the person who dares to love themselves while loving others wins. Now tell me, who are you going to be the moment this ends? The person who gives everything away, or the person who gives wisely?